Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today for Precision Digital's presentation on our new PD420, PD421, PD460, and PD461 set point generators and valve positioners. Before we get started here today, I'd like to do a little bookkeeping. Oftentimes, the questions I get asked during these webinars are, will I be able to get the slides that we're going to see here today? And with that is, can I get a recording of the webinar to share? And the answer to both questions is yes, absolutely. You will get an email, probably mid-next week, that's going to contain both the PDF slides that we review here today, as well as a link to where you can watch the video. So if you want to share this out with colleagues, customers, etc., we'll be happy to share those out. You may have also noticed that you are in listen-only mode. There are just too many people on the line right now for me to have everyone have open phone lines. And so I'll be giving the audio presentation, but if you have questions you'd like to ask during the course of the presentation, just type those questions into the lower left chat box on your screen. This is a fairly short presentation, so at the end of it, I'll be happy to address any questions that may have been asked. Finally, when you were signing up for this webinar, you may have noticed that we have a contest here today. And 10 of you who shared your information with us when you were signing up will get chosen at the end of the webinar to get a free PD460 panel mount 420 milliamp valve position controller. And so stick with us till the end. We'll see who wins those 10 units. With that, I'm going to go ahead, get started, and introduce myself. My name is Joe Ryan, and I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing with Precision Digital. I've been with Precision Digital for 17 years now, and during that time I've done everything from product development to sales to marketing, and been out there doing application support in the field and seeing the plants for myself. So if you have any questions, I'm fairly certain I'm going to be able to answer them, and if I can't, then I'll get back to you after the webinar and get back to you with answers from those who can. And one more question for you before we dive into our content here today, which is, what is your industry? Are you one of Precision Digital's industrial distributors? Are you in manufacturing, pharmaceutical, et cetera? Maybe you're in a public utility like water and wastewater or power generation. Just go ahead and let me know so that I can steer the content a little bit in the right direction, those of you who may be joining us. And it's looking like the vast majority of you are our industrial distributors. However, we have a fair amount of you from other locations as well, including public utility and manufacturing. And I even see that some typed in other. So if you are one of those other folks, please do me a favor, type it in there and let me know what it is that other might be. Maybe we need to add it to our list. So with that, let me talk about what I want you to be able to take away from today's presentation. So I want you to know that we have a line of easy, low-cost ways to generate a 4 to 20 milliamp signal for controlling another device. And as you can see over here, we've got 4 different ways to do that. From field mount enclosures to panel mount, and we'll take a look at what all those are and what that means. We're going to take a look at a live demonstration of that PD460 generating a 4 to 20 milliamp signal to an electric valve actuator, just to get a sense of how simple it can be to manually control those valve actuators using the 460. And of course, at the end, we're going to do our drawing for the 10 lucky winners of their free PD460, which we'll mail out to you. So there are 4 types of set point generators that we have. Some are used to generate set points for systems in general. Some are really designed for going to electric valve actuators. So for starters, let's talk about our PD460. Now that is a NEMA 1 panel mount, meaning that it protects the electronics, but it's not waterproof, it's not watertight, it's not good for washdown applications. But it's a simple panel mount set point generator, meaning that it generates a 4 to 20 milliamp. We'll talk a little bit about how you do that in a minute, but it's just a real simple mount device. It is two-wire loop powered. Again, we'll get into what that means. And it starts at $149. Now, let's say you want to have something that's a little more rugged. I mentioned that this 420 was NEMA 1. That means it just protects the electronics against sort of casual damage. Well, we also have the NEMA 4X version of that, which is our PD421. This is a sealed field mount box version. So if you have an application that's going to be wet and it's going to be dirty, then you want that PD421 because it comes in a very easy to mount package that's fully sealed against environmental hazards. Then you've got your PD460. This is, obviously, as you can tell by looking at it, very similar to the PD420. However, the main difference is that the PD420 doesn't have any labeling on the faceplate, though you can add some with some stickers that we'll see in a second. But it comes pre-set up with that percentage dial there. And the biggest change is that we send it out configured to display percent on that display. So on the set point generator over here on the left, you're going to see that you have 20 showing, meaning I'm sending 20 milliamps. On this valve positioner, you've got 22% showing. Just generally, you want to see the percent open or percent closed of your valve. You don't want to see the milliamp value. That's just not as valuable to people. And then we've got our PD461, which is the NEMA 4X sealed version of the PD460. If you don't have a panel you want it to go in, if you need it to be protected against splashes and dust, well then great. That's where you've got your PD461. So what are the key features of these and how do they work? Well, as we saw, we have panel mount or NEMA 4X version. Your set point can be displayed as a 0 to 100%, 4 to 20 milliamps, or 3 to 21 milliamps if you need to go over and under range a little bit. And that just has to do with what number appears in that window and what label you've got attached to that. The 460 and the 461 come default with percentage being shown. The 420 and the 421 come default showing 4 to 20 milliamps. However, either one of those can have their values changed by the programming to be 0 to 100%, 4 to 20, or 3 to 21 milliamps. They have a backlit display, so you can see it in dim lighting conditions. One of my favorite features of these is the fact that on power on, you can have it programmed to either go to its last set point, or you can have it go to a default set point that's very easy to change just by pushing in on this knob as you change your values. You can adjust how much these values change as you rotate the knob. There's a fine and a coarse adjustment. You can actually change those values. They're highly accurate. Quite honestly, they're more accurate than most applications that you're doing manual control where they're even going to need. They can be powered from 5 to 30 DC volts, keeping in mind that these are a two-wire device. So that's just the guide for what we recommend as a power supply to run the 4 to 20 milliamp loop. It's just the two wires coming in, so you don't have a separate power line. And we give you decals you can attach to the front of this to get percent, milliamp, open, closed, or one you can actually write on so that you can label this up however you want. So if you wanted to put a milliamp sticker over here, we've got one that you can attach to that so you know what it is you're looking at. And lastly, these are an easy, low-cost solution for manual 4 to 20 milliamp control. That's what these are for, and that's what they're designed to do. I mentioned we have some decals that come with it. Again, ease of use is a major element on these. And so to change your units, rather than giving you programming menus, etc., we give you little stickers that you can attach, made out of the same faceplate material and just as rugged as the faceplate is. They'll let you add on percentage, milliamps, open, closed. And this little white box is actually a little white box, so if you want to, you can take your little fine point Sharpie and write in your own units there, or write in your own number there, so you'd understand what it is you're actually setting with this thing. If you want the panel mount version, but you'd like it in an enclosure because you don't have an existing panel, we offer a series of enclosures that are available for the panel mount versions. We've got 1, 2, or 3 enclosure options, which also changes the amount of front panel space you have. So, for example, if you say you wanted to have 4 of these located in the same area, you may still choose to go with the 2 just because you get all this additional panel space. Those come with the cutouts for the units already in them. So again, ease of use being a major element of these units. You get it with the cutouts already in there. You literally just have to push it in through the front and you're done. Now, I'm also wondering, given these are 4 to 20 milliamp generators, what's your level of experience with 4 to 20 milliamp current loops? Are you a seasoned field expert? You've been working with them for years? Or maybe you're a valve or a mechanically oriented person who really doesn't know too much about 4 to 20 milliamps, but the idea of manually controlling your valve actuator sounds pretty good. I'll give you a minute to answer there. And it looks like we've got a combination of seasoned field experts and people who know enough to get the job done. very few of you look like you're a total novice, so we won't spend too much time here going into the basics of 4 to 20 milliamps. But I do just want to mention how that two-wire connection works, just so that it's clear to everybody. So up here you've got your PD420 or whichever of these set point generators or valve positioners you decide to go with. And this is a two-wire device, meaning you literally only have 2 pins on the back of this controller. If you are using a separate power supply to run your 4 to 20 milliamp loop, then you'd come out of your power supply, you'd go into the I+, come out of there, go to the milliamp input of whatever it is you're trying to control, whether you're feeding an input into a PLC, an inverter, a servo, a valve actuator, whatever it happens to be. And then you come out of your drive, your valve actuator, whatnot, and you come into your 24-volt power supply. And that's your 4 to 20 milliamp loop. It's as simple as that. So these are very easy to connect. There is no dedicated power input into these. In fact, in many cases, you have power available at your input device. So, for example, you may be setting this into a PLC or a valve actuator that has power available right there as part of its input pins, in which case you just connect up 2 wires and you're done. But even if you're using an external power supply, still very easy to connect up that loop. With that, why don't we just see a live demonstration of this doing what it does? So here's our PD460 panel mount valve positioner connecting to an electrically actuated, to an electric valve actuator, rather. Now, the audio on this video may be a little quiet, so you might want to be ready to turn your volume up. But it's a short 2-minute video that'll actually show you what this does. And you'll also see that we have it connected up so you can see feedback from the valve to confirm its position.
Hi, this is a demonstration of the PD460 valve positioner. The PD460 is a 4 to 20 milliamp generator designed to display percent open of the valve. It regulates a 4 to 20 milliamp output to an electric valve actuator, in this case an Econ ELA 80, by changing the percent shown on the screen. If I dial in 50%, my valve position will change to show 50% of the dial because I'm now getting 12 milliamps out of the valve positioner. This particular valve actuator has a 4 to 20 milliamp output as well, which allows me to confirm position of the valve so I can be sure that it changed to what I set it to. We're displaying that 4 to 20 milliamp output on this PD6602 loop leader loop powered meter. That allows me to have both my valve position and my confirmation of position all on the same panel. As I change my valve position to say 75%, I get confirmation of that on the loop powered meter. I can check the glass and confirm that I'm 75% open. The ability to have the manual control dial and the confirmation value all on the same panel is great for times when your valves are located in awkward positions or you don't want your operators having to look through the glass to check the dial. In this case, I also have a manual or remote control switch, which in this case is set to manual 4 to 20 milliamp control for my 460 valve positioner. I can switch to PLC remote control, bringing the 4 to 20 milliamp from the control room to the valve actuator. And while my valve positioner has turned off, I still get confirmation on my loop powered meter. If I want to have manual control again, I simply switch it back to manual control, and within a second, my valve positioner has turned back on and is regulating the 4 to 20 milliamp to the valve. If I want to change the value it defaults to, let's say I want it to turn on and be at 0%, I just set my new percentage and push the dial. Now when I turn it off and back on again, I default to 0%. This is a very easy solution for electric valve actuators for manual control or the ability to override control room control and get feedback all in the same panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for watching that. I know a couple of you were having issue with the video. and I do apologize for that. Now, why don't I go and tell you who won those 10 free PD460 valve positioners? Then we do a quick wrap-up and answer a couple of questions for you. So let's see here. I'm going to randomly generate some numbers. All right, and today's winners are, and we will contact you after the webinar to let you know how these are going to go out, etc. Today's winners are Herb Vaughn, Justin Moody, Rick Trotter, Eric Reamer, Steve Atkins, Kirk Heil, Jonathan Gable, Ryan Kilbane, Jamie Duville, Jason Ty, and Peter Howard. So I believe all of you are still with us by the looks of it. I look forward to talking with you about this and getting you out your free PD460 valve positioners. So thank you for attending, everyone. We've had a couple of questions, and so let me address those now. If you don't have time for that or you don't want to submit your question here, then please feel free to reach out, of course, at any time. My contact information is below. And so a great question that came in early on is from Jim, and he's wondering if these are NEMA type rated 4X, which is a designation that UL grants, or if these are just NEMA 4X, or are these type 4X, which means UL granted it, or NEMA 4X, which means it's essentially a self-declaration. And the answer to your question, Jim, is these are not UL type 4X seals. And I know that may cause some difficulty for those of you that are UL 508A panel shops. These are just NEMA 4X devices, meaning that though we have had them tested and that rating has been confirmed by outside testing agencies, it is not, it has not been submitted to UL for that type 4X rating. So great question. I know it makes it a little more difficult for you, but there it is. Now, Jeff also had a question about the power supply for this. I think I may have said 5 to 30 volts DC. Actually, what I meant to say was 15 to 30 volts DC. That is actually our recommended power supply range. Because this is a loop powered device, you need to have enough voltage on that supply to power it on and run it, as well as to let it regulate that current. So it's actually 5 to 30 volts DC that's recommended as the power supply to run that 4 to 20 milliamp loop. The next question is coming in from Ash, who noticed on the video that when I switched it back on, it didn't revert to 75%. So there's a few different ways you can set these up. When it powers on, by default, it's going to go to whatever setting was last saved into it. And you save a setting by pushing the knob. And that means if I change it to 75% and then I turn it off and turn it back on again, if I didn't save that 75%, it's going to go to whatever the last default was. 50%, 0%, could be anything. There is a way to change the settings just by holding the knob down and turning it a few different ways to set it so that it will always return to the last known value. So if you don't have a specific default value you want it to return to, and you do just want it to return to whatever it was last on before power down, you can change it so that that's how it will operate. Hopefully that's clear. Now, Michael has asked, so the switch is needed to move from the manual unit controlling versus the control system controlling. That's correct. So there is no, this doesn't have an internal relay or switch to choose what its 4 to 20 milliamp output is to, say, mirror another input or anything like that. So if you wanted to switch it back and forth between manual and automatic being controlled elsewhere, then my recommendation is just to put a switch in the panel. It's easy. It's very simple to do. It turns off the unit, the valve positioner, so it's very easy to see that that's not actively controlling. And the nice part about these units is they turn back on and start controlling very quickly. So as you saw, in about a second, you're going to be back up and running from the 4 to 20 milliamp from these devices rather than your remote device, say, off in the control room. Samrietta is asking about the dimensions, asking if these are the 1/8 DIN that's standard on our usual panel meters, like the Trident or the ProViews. And they actually are not. These are smaller than that. There just wasn't a need with these devices to have something that big, and so these actually use a smaller cutout. And if you get the enclosures that are used for the specific PD420 or PD420, those enclosures come with that smaller cutout specifically for these meters. But you would not just use your standard 1/8 DIN cutout for these. It's just not a device that required that size. And Johan is asking, for custom units, do we pre-print labels? Is there any max number of characters? So you really don't have custom units, just to be clear, that you can program into it. They're always going to display either 0 to 100, 4 to 20, 3 to 21, one of those settings. However, if you wanted to just put a label on there, for example, let's say you wanted to put a label down telling you what valve it's controlling, or you wanted to put a label down telling you what input to the PLC it was providing, things like that, then you would write that in on that white spot on that label. So we don't pre-print those for you, although if you needed us to do that, I'm sure we probably could. We have other products we provide labels for. But generally, we just ship it out with these writable labels on there that you can just go ahead, write whatever it is you want, and then you can stick that label wherever on this you want it to be. So you could have that label say, valve 2, you put a 2 there and put it over here. You could have it display a different unit next to it. You could have it be closed, open, whatever you may want to do with that. That's why we include that there for you. If you need something pre-printed, talk to us. We can always see what we can do. And then the last question we've got here is from Ryan. Do you change the display, meaning if I'm showing the milliamp value, the percentage, et cetera, through a micro USB port, or do you just do that using the front button and knob? And the answer is you just change it by using the knob. There's a sequence of programming that's very easy to do, where you hold down the knob, you enter into a programming menu, and then you can select from some different function menus in there using the knob. And it won't take you more than a minute to do. So no, there's no separate software or USB connect on these. You just change it using that front control knob. And lastly, I'm sorry, I think I mentioned the last one was the last question. We do have one more question that came in from Joe. If I want to hook up 2 PD6602 units, so that's the panel meter with the 2-line display that we saw in the video. If I want to set up 2 of those, do I set them up in parallel or in series? Well, just as a general comment, these are all loop power devices that you saw in that video. They're all running on the same, or they're all running on 4 to 20 milliamp loops. And so if you wanted to have 2 PD6602s showing the same value or maybe differently scaled values on the same 4 to 20 milliamp loop, then you'd wire those in series. You just run your 1 loop wire through both of those units in series and back to your power supply. And I mean, in general, that's what you would do. For example, if you wanted to add a 6602 to the output of your signal or your set point generator, you would add this power supply, and then you'd put the set point generator and your loop power display and any other devices running on that loop all in series in that loop. And if you need more information on that or anything else, then go ahead and reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who has questions on these products. Thank you very much for your time and attending this short webinar. There is a survey when you leave. If you get that to pop up, then I'd appreciate you filling it out just so we know what we did, or know how we did, and know what you might like to see in the future. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you like what you saw. Give us some feedback, and we'll talk to you soon.